Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining my channel where I talk about spiritual health and mental health. And Annie, come here. You see my dog? Let's see. There she is. I don't know what she's doing. Annie! Annie! She's rooting around here by this fence. Probably smells something. Well, thanks for joining. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Today we're going to talk about saying yes with faith. Saying yes with faith. And we're going to be in Numbers chapter 13, verse 27 through chapter 14, verse 9. Okay? Oh my goodness, now I have to call Annie. Annie! Come! She's such a good dog. Look at this. Here she comes. Good girl. Annie, come here. Annie, come here. She's so good. Good girl. Good girl. All right. Well, first, I just want to remind you what I do. I help men be the best version of themselves through coaching and companionship. So if you need anything, please, please reach out to me. Okay? I'm here for you guys. Now, let's get into saying yes with faith. Now, I'm sure a lot of us have been asked to do something and maybe we didn't really want to do it. Right? We didn't feel well equipped to do so, or we've never done it before, so we were afraid of doing it. But maybe at work, your boss asked you to do something. I remember the first time I had to give a talk or a speech in front of a lot of people. Actually, the whole company. And it was pretty nerve wracking. I felt like I really want to, why are they asking me to do this? Do I really want to do this? And I did pray about it, and I went ahead with it. I said yes in faith. So a lot of times we do things that we've never done before or that we're uncomfortable with. But we have faith that it'll work out in the end. Well, that's what this passage is all about in Numbers. Chapters 13, verse 27 through chapter 14, verse 9. This is when, after God led the Israelites out of Egypt, right? Parted the Red Sea to save them so they could get away from the Egyptian army. And then the sea collapsed on the Egyptian army. And then he led them through the desert for 40 years, providing them with food until they got to just outside the land of Canaan on one side of the Jordan River. And I think Moses sent about a dozen Israelites to scope out the land, to see what was there before they went in. Well, when they came back, when these 12 men came back, they told Moses and the people what they saw. They said, "Oh man, these people are huge. And we're like little grasshoppers next to them. You know, they're never gonna overcome these big, powerful people." And that was in chapter 13, verse 33. They said, "We were like grasshoppers." And why? And they were just, you know, complaining, why is the Lord God bringing us to this land only to allow us to fall by the sword? That's chapter 14, verse 3. You know, we're never going to defeat these people. And the majority of the 12 who went to scope out the land were spreading, you know, all this fear among all the Israelites, all these thousands and thousands of people. And only two, Caleb and Joshua, remembered that God had already promised that he was going to give them the land to his people. Now, they drew confidence from his promise and probably everything else that he did for them in the 40 years when they came out of Egypt and got to where they were at that point. You know, they had faith. They saw the difficulties ahead, but they knew that they had God on their side. And that God would provide his power, his protection, and resources, and not their own. And that came from Numbers chapter 14, verses 6 through 9. In fact, that's the last verse, 9. The Lord is with us. So they knew, Caleb and Joshua, that the Lord is with them. And I think we can do the same thing in our lives when we're asked to do something difficult or new. You know, God is always with us. He's always supporting us. So we can take that step forward in faith that he'll be there for us when we need him. Just like Caleb and Joshua did when they had faith that they would go into the land of Canaan and take it as their own, which is, of course, what they did, right? So that's what we always have to remember throughout our life when we're facing anything difficult or asked to do something new or difficult. Instead of worrying about it or having fear, don't. Just remember that God is with you. And I think that's why God tells us more than anything in the Bible. He tells us more than anything. Do not fear. Do not be afraid. Do not be anxious. He tells us that more than anything. In fact, some people have counted the various times that God tells us that 365 times in the Bible. That's one for every day. So that means don't be afraid. Every day, don't be afraid. Right, Annie? Come here. Annie. Annie, look, here's a stick. Stick. Look, she likes sticks. Annie, come here. Trying to get her in here. She loves sticks. So, bottom line, there's a hawk just flew over us, and I don't know, Annie went and chased it. So, bottom line is, just remember that God is always with you in whatever you do. And don't be afraid. And don't be anxious. And just like this kind of framed poster that I saw someone buying yesterday ahead of me in the store, it said, inhale, exhale. Just take a deep breath. Remember what God has done for you in your life already. Remember that he's always with you. And to not be afraid. Numbers chapter 14, verse 9. The Lord is with us. All right. So, what questions do we have today? In saying yes with faith. First question: when have you felt inadequate to do a task you know God was asking you to do? When have you felt inadequate to do a task you knew God was asking you to do? Well, I'll be honest, the first time was, let's see, years ago. I can't remember how many years ago. For me, about 4 years ago, I first started making videos on social media. I've recently restarted, so I don't even think they're out there anymore. But I used to make videos talking about God, and I was like, oh my gosh, who am I? I don't have any training. I didn't go to school, but I have resources, the Bible, different published literature by scholars who have studied, and I can talk about God and spread his word on social media, making videos. So that's why I do it. But I'll tell you, at first, there is no way I wanted to do it. I'm like, who am I to talk about God and the Bible? Because I certainly had no training in it. And even today, sometimes I get up and I come out here and I'm not, 100% confident in myself all the time. But I know God's with me. And if I make a mistake, maybe someone will reach out to me, leave a comment on the video, and I'll learn something. But I've learned not to be afraid making these videos anymore. But that is a time when I have felt inadequate to do a task I knew God was asking me to do. And it's actually this. How about you guys? When have you felt inadequate to do a task you know God was asking you to do? Put your answers in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. Share it with other people. And then the second question: how do Caleb and Joshua's examples help? How do Caleb and Joshua's examples help? Well, I think it's a great example, right? I mean, Israelites, well, of course, they've had a long history since then, but they're still in that land that God promised them. Even against all obstacles. They were enslaved in Egypt. They were enslaved in Egypt, yet God brought them all the way to the land of Canaan, Israel, where it was occupied by terrible people, by the way. That's why God wanted to displace them. The people that were there were horrible and huge and powerful. Yet God promised that land to Abraham a long time ago, and he delivered. So if we can just have faith like Caleb and Joshua, I mean, that's just another example of how God provides resources, power, and protection for us. Now, hey, I want to thank you guys for joining my channel today. Say yes with faith today if you have the opportunity. And remember, if you feel depressed, anxious, stressed, alone, reach out. I've been there. I can help you. And that's why I help men be the best version of themselves through coaching and companionship. Okay? Don't be afraid. Don't fear. Mental health is spiritual health. Have a great day. See you tomorrow. Peace.